All right. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so I think we will go ahead and get started. It's really nice to have you all here, albeit online and virtual. I'm Beth. I'm the Associate Program Director of the University of Michigan Genetic Counseling Program. And thank you for joining us. We are really excited to introduce the program to you. We have a bit of a presentation where we're going to go over very briefly, kind of genetic counseling 101. I think you are all here probably because you're already well aware of what the profession is. So we'll keep that pretty brief. And then we'll really dive into the U of M genetic counseling program curriculum and try to share a little bit about what we think makes us unique, and then talk about the 2026 admissions cycle. Following all that, we will have a question and answer period. We're really, really fortunate to have 4 students join us this evening. So there's a few different points throughout the presentation that we'll ask them a question or have them introduce themselves and share their input. And then when we're all done during the question answer period, you can certainly ask questions directly to the students as well. So with that being said, as I mentioned, I'm Beth. I've been with the program in this position. Well, I've been in the program total about 6 years now. And prior to that, I was in prenatal genetic counseling here at the University of Michigan or Michigan Medicine. I have for a long time been a supervisor to students, taught genetic counseling students in the reproductive genetics course. And more recently in this role, I've mentored research projects. And then my main hat I wear is thinking about clinical training. So as we get to that part of the conversation tonight, I'm happy to answer questions about clinical training. We'd love to keep this interactive. It is a little bit challenging online, so we will keep the chat open. Please feel free to put questions in the chat throughout, and we'll pause at different points to either answer questions or address questions. We'll also have the students answering questions in the chat and program leadership answering questions in the chat. That's probably the best way to handle questions, or saving them till the end. So with that being said, let me hand it off to Carrie to introduce herself and get us started.
Hi, so I am Carrie Branham, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Genetic Counseling Program here. I've been in this role since 2023. And within the program, my main role is involved in the research training. I work with students on their research project, teach class in research skills. I've been a genetic counselor at Michigan Medicine since 2002, providing I was a clinical genetic counselor in the area of ophthalmic genetics, so eye care. This picture is actually a picture of me from a long time ago when I was much younger, providing genetic counseling for one of our patients with ophthalmic disease. So even in that time before I was directly with the program, we would have students who rotations with us in our ophthalmic genetics clinic and mentoring on their research project. So Beth and I are going to do a little bit of tag teaming back and forth, going through different parts of the presentation to share information with you. So I'm going to just kind of start off with a brief primer. And like Beth said, I imagine many of you have been thinking about that you're here because you're interested in a career in genetic counseling. So hopefully you've been learning about it, but just to kind of get us all on the same page of what we think about genetic counseling and what it is and where genetic counselors kind of have their role. So genetic counseling is the process of helping people understand and adapt to the medical, psychological, and familial implications of genetic contributions to disease. So our training program is intended to help people get to that position where they can do that. This process of genetic counseling, it really takes interpreting family and medical histories to assess the chance of disease occurrence or recurrence, provides education about inheritance, testing, management, prevention, resources, and research, and promotes counseling for the patient to make informed decisions and adapt to their risk or the condition that they're affected with. Next, please. So when we think about the core skills of genetic counselors, this is really being armed with the genetic expertise and ability to kind of analyze different genetic data, equip them with interpersonal or psychosocial and counseling skills in order to act in appropriate measure when we're working with patients, provide them with tools to help educate people, and also for professional development and practice. So these kind of all come from the Accreditation Council of Genetic Counseling and kind of go into everything that, again, we teach as a genetic counseling program. Next, please. So thinking about genetics, so a lot of what you may have heard about on those last two slides was thinking about genetic counselors in a clinical setting. Genetic counselors really do work in diverse areas across many types of diseases: pediatric, general adult, reproductive, cardiology, genomic medicine, neurogenetics, cancer, ophthalmology, not even listed there, but it is a very important part of that. This is coming from the National Society of Genetic Counselors. Also working in diverse work settings. So not only the clinical settings, but also different laboratory, government, hospitals, nonprofits, biotech, working in universities. So really, there's a lot of different areas where genetic counseling have those skills that can be useful in working across lots of different environments. Next, please. And within all of those different settings, there's lots of different roles that genetic counselors can provide. So advocacy, some working in direct patient care, teaching, management, different scientific or report writing that might be in a laboratory setting, program development, or research. Next, please. So that was just kind of the quick genetic counseling 101 to help students understand exactly, or help you understand exactly what the role of genetic counselor is. To move into a little bit more specifics about our genetic counseling program and how we operate, just the broad overview before Beth gets into some more of the specifics of it. The vision of the U of M genetic counseling program is to train genetic counselors that can meet the challenges to help shape the future of genetic counseling and genomic medicine. And along those same lines, our mission is to provide individualized, integrative, and supportive genetic training environment comprised of comprehensive and rigorous academic curriculum, diverse clinical experiences, and a broad spectrum of research opportunities that supports the development of these genetic counseling scholars. Next, please. There. Okay. So to think about kind of what are some of the main ideas that we think about when we kind of describe our program. So we are a very well-established program. So dating back to 1979. We have a small cohort of students. This year's class is 9. We usually do end up with around 9 students. We like to think of ourselves, and I do think that it is true, that as leadership, we are accessible, supportive, and dedicated to the program. So keeping those kind of ideals in mind, this allows us to mentor the students, individualize different aspects of the program, and build an inclusive and collaborative community of genetic counseling students, clinical supervisors, leadership, etc. Next, please. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but just kind of highlight some of the guiding principles that our program has developed over time. So we understand that diversity is essential to the genetic counseling learning community and the profession. We think that's very important. Inclusion is critical to the training environment. Equity is fundamental for all of our students to have the opportunity to thrive. And accountability is vital to cultivating this process.
I keep trying to share links and you pause right as I'm done so that I'm going to the next slide. So sorry about that, Carrie.
We are going to turn it, as Beth had mentioned in the beginning, we're going to have a couple of opportunities throughout to kind of hear from our students. This is a lovely picture of the classes of 2026 and 2027. So next slide, we have our first question up for students. So this is Ellen, class of 2027. Ellen, what is your favorite thing about the Jeanette Counseling Training Program? And please introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Carrie, for the introduction. Well, my name is Ellen. It's really nice to meet all of you. A little bit about myself. This is my first year here at UMGCP, and I went to UCLA for undergrad, just graduated last year, and my hometown is Irvine, California. So to answer the question, honestly, Carrie was talking a little bit about this, but one of the huge strengths that I've found and one of my favorite things about the program is that it is a smaller program. I really do feel like us as a community with each other get to do like everything with each other and really get to know each other on a deeper level, having only 9 people in our class. And we also really get to connect with the second year class as well, which has been such a fun time. We go to football games together and kind of do things outside of classes. And I think that the small class size helps with that. And along with that, just immense like support from all of our professors. Even in these first couple of months, we're constantly getting check-ins, we're constantly getting asked for feedback, which I really think speaks to their ability to work with us in such a smaller cohort.
Thanks, Ellen. I should mention we have our second years are joining us after class, so they can't answer this first question, but if you want to ask them later, they'll be back on. And our program director, Monica Marvin, had a conflict early, but she's hoping to join for the end question answer session too. So we will have more people joining us. So I'm going to take over and now start to dive a little bit deeper into our program. So for us and for many programs, we have kind of core curriculum built around the classroom or didactic work, the clinic and your clinical training and clinical experience, and then a research component. One thing as you read about different programs and you're looking online, they can start to sound pretty similar. We all go through accreditation with ACGC. We start to look maybe a little bit of the same. So in your seat, it might be hard to differentiate things. And so this is one way that we think we look a little bit different than other programs in that we hit the ground running in all 3 areas as soon as you get here. And we maintain activities in all 3 areas across all 5 semesters of training. There's a little bit of difference with the no classes in the summer, but I will explain that. So we are really built around the idea that integrated learning is key. We believe what you learn in the classroom is emphasized and solidified with your clinical experience. What you see in clinic, you bring back to the classroom in discussions and exercises, and all of that can feed your research ideas, which you can also take what you learn about research back into prepping for cases. So we think this integrated approach really solidifies concepts and gets you ready for a career in lifelong learning. It's not for everybody. If you are someone who wants all your coursework up front and you want to cross all your T's and dot all your I's before you really start talking to patients, we may not be the best fit for you. And that's okay. There's different approaches and different programs. And hopefully part of tonight is trying to figure out, like, could we be a good fit for you? So I do think that's a good question as you look at different programs, like what does the layout look like for these different components of a program? So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that looks like. This is a very busy slide, and I don't expect you to memorize or read everything in every box. But the idea here is that each column is a semester of training. So we have fall of year 1, winter of year 1. Then we have summer. And as I mentioned, during the summer, you don't register for classes, so it is not a tuition-bearing semester, but you are in full-time activities all summer. And then we have fall of year 2 and winter of year 2. Each row then is showing you how we integrate these different elements of the program. The blue is coursework. The yellow is your clinical internships. Green is research. With research, we do have courses in the first year. So technically, research, that green could be blue too, because you do have classes in research methods that Carrie can talk more about because she runs those courses. Your other coursework, though, are in these blue columns, and I'm going to take a little bit closer look at them. the courses that we develop, you know, training for genetic counselors really has to span the hard sciences, psychosocial counseling. There's a lot of different elements to what we bring together in the classroom. And to do that, we take advantage of this huge university. So we do classes within the department. So there are classes in human genetics foundations. Students in our program take those classes alongside PhD students and master's degree students in human genetics within the Department of Human Genetics here at the Michigan Medical School. So those classes tend to be taught by researchers in the department who are doing cutting edge research. It really gets you some strong fundamentals and also critical thinking in how to think about research and how to read the literature and how to analyze and assess data that's out there. The counseling foundation classes tend to be just our cohort of students. So that would be just the 9 of you, usually 9 of you, generally 8 to 10 students, but we've been landing about 9 for the past few years. So those courses are really just the cohort of 9. And they're taught by experienced genetic counselors here at Michigan Medicine. So Monica and I direct those courses and do a lot of teaching in those courses, but we also pull on the strengths of various genetic counselors here to come and talk about what they're excited about, what they work on in clinic, and share with our students that way. Topics in medical genetics, that's in the second year, and that's where you get a meat of a lot of learning about different conditions. And that is taught by some genetic counselors, but then also physicians across the university who directly interact with patients, considering the condition we're talking about or the body systems we're talking about. And then the umbrella, additional coursework. So additional coursework, all of our students take a class called Death, Loss, and Grief that's built into our curriculum, and that is taught by social workers. We have a wonderful School of Social Work here at U of M, as well as a wonderful School of Public Health. And so we want to use them. So we have a course in the School of Social Work that lets you interact with social work students, but also learn directly from social work staff or faculty. And then all of our students take electives. You can start taking electives the winter of your first year and then throughout your second year. And one of those electives needs to be in the School of Public Health. So our School of Public Health is excellent, has a lot of classes that our students are generally interested in, but you have wiggle room with your other electives. So this is another thing we think does make Michigan's program unique. We really hope that you can tailor your education. We want you to be getting the master's and the education you want for your career ahead, not just, you know, clinical practice when you're first out. We're really thinking about you as a future professional. And so electives that you take, you know, as long as they're related to genetic counseling, people have taken electives really across the university. So yes, with social work, yes, with the School of Public Health, but also other health professionals like nursing. People have taken business classes, like business of biology. There's really this is a huge university with lots and lots of wealth and wealth of resources. And so different electives are possible to shape your education. All right, so I'm going back now and doing a little bit deeper dive into that yellow row that explains clinical training. So same idea here, each column is a semester. And each row gives you an idea of what the expectations are across your clinical training. When it comes to clinical training, the idea is really to give you a lot of exposure and opportunities early on, and then give you space to start practicing to the point where you're practicing and eventually demonstrating competency in the different skills that you need to be an independent provider, independent genetic counselor. And so we do jump in right away in the fall, but you're not talking to patients yet. So even though you're starting that first or second week of classes, you're not yet expected to be taking on roles and sessions. Fall is really a time for what we call active observation. Active observation should look different than the shadowing you might have done in preparing for admissions or preparing for making the decision to become a genetic counselor. Shadowing might be more like oh, I wonder if this career is of interest to me. Active observation is more, oh, I see that the different parts of this session included these different steps. This is how the counselor got that done. How would I have done it? Do I understand the different roles that are or tasks that are being done? It's a very different experience. And the idea there is people come to us with all sorts of different exposure. So some people have never been able to shadow. Some people have been GCAs and they've shadowed a ton, but only in one specialty. Some people have had a mix. So that fall semester gives you lots of exposure to different specialties, lots of exposure to different healthcare systems, and gets everybody kind of a similar language and understanding before they jump into their active rotations. So then starting in winter, you have 10 weeks at one site and you're able to start taking on active roles in a session. You kind of have a longer rotation to be with your supervisor, build some trust, start taking on active roles. And then over the summer, we do train straight through the summer, but you're not in classes. So it's kind of a time for clinic and some research activities. Clinic over the summer is typically 2 full-time, about 6-7 week rotations. Full-time being 40 plus hours a week. You are really fully immersed in the clinic. Usually one of those 2 rotations is here at Michigan Medicine or one of our locally used sites, and one of them most often is out of state. And I can talk a little bit more about that. Then students come back from summer, they're feeling really good. They've had a lot of full-time experience, so they're feeling pretty nice and confident. And the nice thing is they still have a whole nother year of academic training. So in that first fall, most students will do another traditional rotation, like an 8-week, 1.5-ish day a week, with sessions with patients. And then in the winter of year 2, some students will have skills they're working on that they'll do another traditional rotation. But other students will do something we call a designer rotation. And this is another thing that makes the program unique and lets students tailor their education. So when we get near the end of the clinic, I'll tell you a little bit more about what a designer rotation is. This is just a snapshot, kind of a summary snapshot of clinical training for our students. So that little honeycomb figure is telling you about the class of 2026, what their fall observation rotation looked like. So across their fall last year, they had 10 different days that they worked across, the 9 of them worked across 12 different sites. What that typically looks like is you're going to rotate somewhere either Tuesday or Thursday each week. And you know at the start of the semester which weeks you're going on a Tuesday, which weeks you're going on a Thursday, and you go to a different site each week. So across that semester, they were able to see, on average, 7 different specialties across 3 different service delivery models. So video, telephone, mostly in person, but they do get exposure to video and telephone. And on average, they saw 25 cases over the fall semester. The other little color chart here is a summary for all cases for the class of 2025, the graduating class from this year. You can see the colors are the specialties of the cases that they saw. And on average, they graduated seeing 173 cases per student, and 108 of those are participatory, meaning they had active roles within the session. We are really, really fortunate to have a great community of genetic counselors here at Michigan Medicine. We are at about 30 genetic counselors here, and we utilize them a lot for our clinical training. We have 7 different clinics, and within those clinics, multiple specialty or subspecialty clinics. So we have kind of the more common specialties that you saw in the charts Carrie showed. We have prenatal at the Fetal Diagnostic and Treatment Center, Peds Genetics, that is a big group and has multiple specialty clinics. We have adult medical genetics and cancer genetics. For cancer genetics, there's also subspecialty clinics. We have a dedicated breast and ovarian risk assessment clinic, as well as a general genetics clinic. And then we have 3 kind of unique specialty clinics. We have cardiovascular, opathy, which Carrie mentioned, and then neurology. Outside of Michigan Medicine, we do use what we affectionately call our locally used sites, mostly in Royal Oak and Dearborn. and Toledo. Using those sites lets us expand students' experience and exposure to different patient population and different hospital systems. So not just large like academic centers. And so we do utilize these spots pretty regularly. And then summer. I mentioned I'd come back to kind of summer away sites. So for clinical training, for that summer away site, it is a bit of a process. And this is one rotation where students can kind of have input about where they might want to go over the summer. It does typically take a little bit of back and forth. So we have some sites that we already have agreements with and we've sent students before and we know a lot about. Other times, students really want to try someplace new. They have a relationship with a counselor or an area they want to go to. So it is always a little bit of back and forth, and we help establish agreements and things for these summer rotations. Um, on this map are where we have had more recent students rotate over the summer. I will note it is a little bit tricky. Students sometimes come interested in rotating somewhere that already has a program in the area, and that has proven pretty difficult because that program is probably using those sites in the summer. So not impossible, but it does get a little bit tricky when students are interested in those areas. But otherwise, this is something that can, again, kind of tailor your training. Some people will really have a specialty they want to dive into in a full-time setting. Some people have an area they really want to go to, either geographically, because maybe they want to work there after graduation, or patient population wise. We have a student now who's really interested in Appalachian area and care for rural areas. And so she was able to rotate in West Virginia and ended up doing her research on a project with the counselors from West Virginia. So again, knowing your interest in working with us, we can tailor the program in a few different ways. So I've just said a lot. I'm going to summarize here and then I'm going to pause to take some questions. The things I want to wrap up on: clinical training does take place with a variety of service delivery models. Most of our most of our sessions are in person, but we do have lots and lots of clinical settings now are mixed where they do use telephone or video. So our students get exposure to all the service delivery models. We do use standardized patients. So across training, we have 4 checkpoints, and those checkpoints, 3 of the 4 are using standardized patients in our simulated patient space where we're able to record the sessions, and then they're reviewed by students, they're reviewed by program leadership, and we really see it as a time to be able to explore some different issues as well as kind of get you formative feedback in making your goals for the rest of your training. Designer rotations, I mentioned in that last semester, some students will be able to do a designer rotation. And a designer rotation is kind of what it sounds like. It's the student designing their goals and objectives for a rotation. These are still clinical facing, meaning you're still working on clinical skills. But what it typically is not patient facing roles. It is usually more like supplemental activities. So because that sounds like a bunch of muckety muck and mud, I will give you an example. This can look very different, but in some cases, someone might say, I really am thinking about a cancer job, but I don't, know of all the other things that happen in a cancer setting. So someone might design a rotation where they get to do other cancer related things like observe a breast reconstruction consult, go to tumor boards, meet with the social work who cares for patients, explore advocacy for different patients with different backgrounds facing cancer. Alternatively, we've had students interested in more kind of cultural humility and cultural understanding of how patients approach genetic decisions. And so they've been able to do things like shadow interpretive services, interview people that are with our Japanese family clinic, things like that. So the designer can look different, and you work with program leadership to design the activities that will help you meet your objectives. But again, another way that we kind of personalize your training. And then finally, sometimes I get asked about laboratory exposures and opportunities. We kind of see this as we want all students to have some level of exposure to the laboratory. So all of our students will do a tour of either our cytolab or our molecular lab. that all students will have an opportunity to meet with alumni that have worked in the laboratory setting. We also are really fortunate to have genetic counselors now in our clinical molecular laboratory. Once students kind of get that main exposure, then we kind of look to your interests. So if someone is really not that interested in laboratory, fine. If someone is really interested in the laboratory exposure or industry, then we try to make additional supplemental activities possible. So we've had students rotate in multiple sites, Myriad, Quest, Color. For an industry, we've had students do their designer with the genetic counselors in the lab here. So it's kind of like a bare threshold for everybody. And then once someone is like, yeah, I'm really interested in this, we try to get them more. All right, before I hand it over to Carrie to talk about research, I feel like I just went through a lot and I know that there's been questions popping up. Are there any questions I should address in the chat or any other questions anybody wants to unmute and ask? Looks like Carrie, you've been answering some. Oh, there's a question here that's interesting. At what point do students choose their specialty? So this is important, and I didn't say that, but genetic counselors train as generalists. So genetic counselors by profession do not train in a specialty. We are trained as genetic counselors that can apply to different specialties. So for the most part, all of our students will get prenatal patients, we'll get cancer patients, we'll get peds patients, and we'll get some adult non-cancer patients. Every student will have to have those. That's by our accrediting body. And then outside of that, if someone is really interested and they are interested in learning more about opthy or cardio or neuro, then we try to make that work. So there's no point at which someone like chooses a specialty. Even once they're working, if someone's in cancer for 10 years and then they want to switch to neuro, they can do that. They don't have to be recertified or anything like that.
Beth, there was one more question. I was trying to furiously type there, but I'm just gonna say it. So this was a question from Kenya who asked about training for video visits and phone visits. And my response would be, I don't know if there's anything formal in the curriculum, but that is definitely a part of students see patients across all of those modalities. And I think most of it's probably on the job training. Is there any sort of formal in the curriculum that teaches that?
Yeah, we do actually. So when students before they shadow, and then again later in GC skills, they are given some best practice guides to being part of video sessions. And then later through checkpoints and things like that, we reiterate some different practices. So it's a little bit of on the job learning. Like if you are in a clinic that does a lot of video, or you are in a clinic that does a lot of telephone, you will get more of that. But there are some formal kind of like best practice things in place in the curriculum, thinking about things like, oh, you can't use visual aids on the telephone, or it's a lot harder to read nonverbals, if we're using telephone, or how do you know who's in the room if you're doing videos? So there are things in that place for that as well. Great question. Any other clinic questions or classroom questions?
Hi, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you might cover this when you talk about research, but when you're focusing on like lab exposure and opportunities, are these also in a clinical setting or is it like more genetics emphasized?
Yeah, so when we say like lab exposure and opportunities, I'll be honest. So some people are thinking like bench work, sitting at the bench, sample to report type lab work. And other people kind of mix in their industry roles. So like genetic counselors that can hold several different roles in industry. So from marketing to clinical expert or clinical expertise to patient facing roles. And so we try to cover kind of both. So Carrie will talk about research projects that the students undertake, but in terms of like exposure to literal lab work, that it comes in through the classroom or some of these additional experiences. For industry, similarly, we have things in place in the classroom, like we have a panel of alumni that now work in industry to come talk about it. And then students who are interested may be able to also do a full rotation clinically at an industry site. The reason I say maybe might is a lot of those industries, those rotations you have to apply for individually. I can't organize them for you, but if you were interested and you got one, we try to work with you to make the rest of your clinical experience work around that. So I'll let Carrie answer a little bit more in terms of like individual student projects. All right, Carrie, maybe we'll go on to research.
So just to kind of give you, I want to give you just a taste of what the research part of this looks like, and kind of, I'm going to show some slides that have some information about what other students have done. So similar to kind of areas that you can individualize your training with us. I think the big one, there's some coursework, you can take some electives. We really try to work with you as far as if there's experience that you're very interested in doing that. Research is a third area that really we strive to your topic and interest. So if I look at kind of what the students have done over time, it's really been diverse, working with a lot of people as research mentors. So that may be within the Department of Human Genetics, it may be with the medical school, it may be with genetic counselors who work in the prenatal setting, or in the School of Public Health, or the School of Social Work. We use all of these resources from across the university to have topics that students can work with. So as Beth had said, I teach a research skills class that's all throughout the first year of training. And this is to help you develop your research ideas and give you some of the basic skills that are needed to complete the research project. We know that students will come with a lot of diverse research experience, some of which is not really much, and some who have extensive research experience. So we try to make it so everybody has some understanding of what the research process looks like, and how to make that happen. So throughout the first year of training, students are developing their research topic. Over the summer, they continue to develop that research topic, and some people may start on their research project. Yeah, the second year they will execute the project and then present it for the final year of training. So really kind of the summary of what's on the slide, just saying we have this diverse group of topics that students can do for their research project. And the research is presented nationally and within the university. Everyone presents. We have a day that's a research symposium where all students present here within the Department of Human Genetics. And many of the research topics the research ideas are presented at national meetings. Many of them National Society of Genetic Counselors. Some may choose other genetics meetings. Some may choose more foundation or clinical interest groups that they're presenting at. Also, a lot of these are published in high impact journals as well. So really contributing to the field of our knowledge of genetics and genetic counseling. Next slide, please. So this is just some of the examples of some of the topics that have come out of the work that's been presented by the students. These are different publications from 2023 to 2025. So we get really excited to see it when our students' hard work comes to fruition. They dedicate, along with their mentorship committee, a lot of time and energy into getting the research project completed, and kind of the publication of it is the accumulation. A lot of these are published within the Journal of Genetic Counseling. That's not required. Some, you'll see one of them was in a cancer journal as well. And so really it's kind of whatever the topic goes along with is the journal that it may be submitted. If you can do the next slide, and I'll just kind of give an overview of the types of projects. So these are research topics from the classes of 2025 and 2026. So really, again, diverse topics, diverse fields. I would say a lot of the work that is done, and this will get back to the question that was asked in about the lab rotation as well. So a lot of these do end up being, I would say the most common will be surveys, interviews, chart reviews. That's not required though. Some people have worked on developing different educational tools. We had one student who had graduated in 2024 that created educational videos for students. Some students can do a lab-based project if they want. I would say I haven't I've only been in this leadership role for the last couple of years. None of the students have chosen a lab role, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is a lot of students I have worked in labs in the past and are kind of transitioning to a more clinical role now. So they could absolutely do one if they want, but many students don't choose that. Logistically, it can also be challenging as really if they're going to be in the lab, they have like 6 to 7 months in their second year of training. So I would say most of these topics have focus more on that interview, survey, chart review kind of thing, but we want to make an exciting project for you. And so we kind of try to align with your interests there. And as another example of one thing that we do try and do is there will be what we call legacy projects. So a lot of the students are kind of developing their topic from scratch. But here we had one of the students who was developing an educational tool to work with for genetic counselors to work with the transgender and non-binary communities. And that was started by a student in the class of 2021 and continued by the next year. So many of our students do come just from the students' ideas, but they can sometimes kind of tag on to a project that's been started in the past. I think so. Turn it back to you, Beth.
Turning it back to me. Okay. So you may have seen online another thing that is unique about the University of Michigan program is we do have the opportunity for a dual degree program. The most established kind of concrete dual degree program is with the School of Public Health, where people can complete their master's for genetic counseling as well as an MPH. Most students who do this do it in the Health Behavior and Health Equity, HBHE program within the School of Public Health, but some people have also done it in health management and policy. So the dual degree requires 3 years of training, and typically what that looks like is 1 year. The first year is kind of with your incoming genetic counseling cohort and the classes that we've been describing and activities that we've been describing. The second year is a little bit more like you're off in public health land. You're not totally off. You still are engaged with the counseling program and counseling community, but most of your focus is in the School of Public Health coursework. And then the third year is a little bit of a combination of both. So you're back with us finishing clinical training. You're also finishing up public health credits. So the third year is a little bit mix of both. For the dual degree program, you apply to the two separately. We have had some students learn about the dual degree program once they're here in the genetic counseling program. So it is possible to apply to the School of Public Health during your first year in the genetic counseling program. Most students who have completed the dual degree come in knowing that they're doing the dual degree, that they've been accepted to both programs. If you have any questions about the dual degree programs, there is more information online from our website. And also the co-director of the program, kind of the director of the public health side, Dr. Roberts, is also available if you have specific questions. We do not do a different track in the match system, so it does not weigh on us and your admissions into the program, whether or not you're interested or accepted into the public health side of things. So they are considered independently. And then the costs of study. We are a state institution, as you may well know, and recognizing that the tuition is a really important thing to discuss. The financial obligations we do not take lightly, so we want to be really transparent and share this with you. And then we do talk about financial support more during the interview process. So some of this is a little tentative and trying to predict because things can change, but just to share with you an idea of what the cost looks like. So the 2025-2026 average tuition per semester for non-Michigan residents was $30,138. For Michigan residents, it was $14,944. So the distinction between in-state and out-of-state is really strict from the University of Michigan. They decide and they have the rules around that, and it really, really, really rarely changes, meaning it's really hard for people to change that distinction. like once they're here or anything like that. So unfortunately, that tuition and that distinction of in-state, out-of-state is out of our control. And so we do want to share that with you. It will change. They will not set the 2027 tuition until late into summer. It generally doesn't change a vast amount in the 1 year, but it is not set yet. The genetic counseling program does provide students with different financial support, and you can learn more about this online. But all students will receive support in terms of funding for student travel and education conferences. That's generally about $1,500. And then all students will get funding to defray the costs of clinical training. So that summer away that I talked about. For the past few years, we've been fortunate and we hope to keep up that supplemental funding, and it's been $1,500 as well. Some students were able to give support to in the form of tuition stipends. And we hope to have that more solidified and share more about tuition stipends at interviews. We also have some funding to defray the relocation expenses, generally always for out-of-state students, for some out-of-state students, I should say. And then we do have the Neal Genetic Counseling Research Fellowship that is awarded to a year 2 student and can be used for tuition. There are other financial supports in place, and there's several different like fellowships and scholarships, including the Rackham Merit Fellowship. Again, you can find information on the Rackham Merit Fellowship and other fellowships from our website. Some of these we can nominate applicants for, others applicants have to kind of self-identify or they can apply for. And then finally, work study positions, GSI positions. Some students ask us about working during the program. Many of our students, I would say the majority of our students, do have some sort of job while they're in training. Typically, that's probably about 10 hours a week. Some will have jobs they came in with that they're able to keep virtually or here on campus. That can be GCA type positions. Some people keep up waitressing jobs. Like it's a wide variety of jobs that people keep. But I would say on average around 10 hours a week. Some people are able to get work study positions here at the hospital, and those are often GCA type positions, which is great because you're kind of double dipping and learning a lot while you're on the job. Graduate student instructorship do require more hours, GSIs. People apply for those for the department that they are going to be a GSI for. So typically for our students, they're applying to be a GSI for a genetics course for undergrad. So that's through the Department of Biology. So that is to say, we don't have any say in who gets to be a GSI for undergraduate courses in another department. Historically, our students have been really fortunate to get GSI positions, but not all of them will, and it seems to fluctuate. Last year, we didn't have such luck. This year, we have a student doing a GSI, so it does just kind of differ. That does come with tuition, which is huge, but it is more like pushing 20 hours a week, so it is a very demanding semester when students are GSIs. And then finally, we want to share some outcome data with you. Again, this is available on our website, and this is something you can look across websites or learn about each of the programs. This is supposed to be transparent to applicants. So our ABGC board pass rate, since 2000, our cumulative pass rate of test takers is 100%. Our graduates generally do well on the boards. Our first time test taking for the last 3 classes is 83%, which is higher than the national average. For employment, our students for the class of 2025, 89% of them, or 8 out of 9 of them, had at least one job offer, if not more, within 3 months of graduation. 5 of the 9 of them had jobs prior to graduation, and then all of them had jobs within 5 months. The job market, as you may have heard, it ebbs and flows, and it has been a little bit tricky over the last few years. I think that our large alumni network is really great when it comes to helping our students network, even if they don't have an opening. Knowing in the state who might have an opening has been really, really beneficial for our students. And then finally, our graduation rate. For the last 3 classes, we have 100% graduation rate, no attrition. All right, we are up to our next question, and I think we might be a tiny bit early, so we may not have Madeline, our second year, with us, but Katie and Ellen can answer the question and talk a little bit about life in Ann Arbor. Oops. Yes. Katie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sounds great. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a first year in the program along with Ellen. I also just graduated from undergrad. I went to Dickinson College, which is in Pennsylvania, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And a little bit about life in Ann Arbor. I just wanted to talk about my housing situation too, because I know that that was sort of on the front of my mind when I was applying to places. After I figured out that I matched, I jumped pretty quickly into the housing situation. I actually am living with somebody who went to undergrad with me, so that was pretty fortuitous that I had somebody here that I could link up with. But I know some of my classmates have lived with random people or have lived with people within the program, so that's always an option too. Um, I love where I live. It's a lot of space. There's a lot of places that are pretty close to the med campus and close to where we take classes. I'm within walking distance, and I know my classmates that aren't within walking distance, they're certainly within busing distance, and Ann Arbor has a pretty good bus system, so we definitely utilize that a lot. And lots of variety of different housing options, apartments, condos, houses. So really anything that you're looking for is here because it is a college town, so it's equipped to have a lot of people in it. As far as life in Ann Arbor, I really love the Michigan Theater in town. I am like the number one hype woman for that theater because they do a student membership actually where you get discounted tickets, which is really great. And they do a bunch of different spotlights of different artists. I saw Oh Brother, Where Art Thou this weekend there, which is one of my favorites. So definitely good to see it on the big screen. I really love that. Lots of good food options as well. I love Blank Slate for ice cream. I think I'm gonna go there tonight actually as a little treat for myself. And lots of different multicultural food options as well. Something else about Ann Arbor that I love, and I think Madeline can speak to this as well, is lots of great theater shows because of the great musical theater department within the undergrad. So my plan this Thursday is to see Cabaret in town, so that should be fun. But yeah, if you have any other questions about Ann Arbor, feel free to drop them in the chat.
Thanks, Katie. All right, Ellen, do you want to answer next?
Yes, I can speak to life in Ann Arbor a little bit. And like Katie said, a ton of different housing options for you all. I actually live a little bit further away from campus, so I take the bus every day. But it's super easy. You swipe your UMich card and you just get on the bus, go to class. Very easy and free for UMich students. Um, but there is so much to get involved with in Ann Arbor. I actually just joined, I played like soccer in undergrad, and so that was really important to find like a team that was like low commitment. And so I'm a part of a soccer team connected to the city of Ann Arbor, and we play like twice a week when the weather's nice outside. And then in the winter, it will be an indoor league. So I'm looking forward to that. And you can ask me more once I finish the indoor league, but I think it will be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Ellen. And Madeline just joined us, so just in time to answer. Are you up for chatting about life in Ann Arbor?
I am, yes. Yeah, I'm glad that this worked out and I was able to hop on just in time here. So yeah, I love Ann Arbor. I love that Ann Arbor is a good mix of like city, but also very naturey. I'm a big like nature lover. I love to be outside. And so I love that there's lots of places where I can go on walks. There's the Argo River that a lot of people like take tubes and float down in the summer. There's lots of really fun things to do outdoors. The Nichols Arboretum has beautiful flowers. So I'm finding lots of fun things to do outside. Katie mentioned theater. Definitely I've gone to a few of the like School of Music, Theater, and Dance performances. They have a show I think in January that like combines like all the different schools with like yeah, theater, dance, but all the like instrumentalists that I'm really looking forward to going to. I wanted to go last year and couldn't, so I'm looking forward to that this year. This Saturday, I'm going to see a Broadway show in Detroit. That's not too far away, so the Fisher Theater there has lots of fun shows for music lovers too. I love going to the football games. I think maybe Katie touched on the sports a little bit, but other sports too. I got to see a couple of the guys that went to the Olympics do gymnastics here, which was super cool. Went to one of the girls' meets. That was super fun. So lots of good sports. Lots of fun little, like the farmers market in Carytown is super fun. Lots of fun little shops and restaurants there too. So I think there's something for everyone in Ann Arbor. Oh, also our classmates or my class has done a lot of trivia. There's trivia like every night of the week in Ann Arbor. So if you're into that, this is a good spot for that too.
Thank you. All right, I think also Monica's been able to join us, so she's gonna step in here and I'll let you introduce yourself and take over.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry that I wasn't able to be here for the first half of this. I was in another meeting, but my name is Monica Marvin and I'm the program director. I've been with the genetic counseling program in various leadership positions for I think about 20 years now, but as the program director for, I think this is my 4th year. And I'm super excited to see all of you here tonight. I think my task is to discuss admissions. So what you're looking at here is just a general overview of what numbers looked like for us in the 2025 admissions cycle. We had 235 applicants. We conducted 40 interviews, which were all virtual interviews through Zoom. And then we recruited our class of 9 students, many of whom you're meeting tonight. So pay attention to different timelines from different programs. While there are some dates that are consistent for everybody, and those are the ones that relate to the national match, there are obviously some dates that are specific to programs. So for the University of Michigan, the deadline to submit your application is January 5th. We don't start reviewing applications until January 6th or 7th or around that time. So there's not necessarily a benefit to getting it submitted much earlier than that. Although if you'd like to be on top of things, that's fine, but it's not a rolling admissions sort of situation. We will extend invitations for our virtual interviews, usually around the end of or the middle of February. And then we conduct most of our interviews at the end of February through March. And then our rank order list and applicants' rank order lists are due to the National Matching Service on April 7th. And then April 15th is the national match results release date. And hopefully everybody's had a chance to look a little bit at the match website from NMS to understand what all of the rules are related to the match. And if questions come up about that, we're happy to try to answer those as well. On our website, which you can reach through this QR code, you should find a link to a PDF that is our program prospectus. This PDF has all of the same information in it that's on our website, and maybe actually a little bit more. And I think some applicants have found it helpful to have it all just in one single document that you can search through rather than going to multiple tabs. So if you haven't taken a look at the program prospectus yet, I encourage you to do so. And again, if questions come up, you can certainly reach out to us, and either one of us or Molly Martin can assist you with that. On our website and in the program prospectus, you'll find our prerequisites for the program. They're listed here, and we'll just point out a couple of questions that come up frequently. One of them relates to a laboratory component for biochem or genetics. We don't require a laboratory component. You need to take science courses up through and including biochemistry. So typically that does include things like organic chemistry. And then if one is available at your institution, you need to take an upper level human genetics course, which is usually a level 300 or level 400 course. If you're not sure whether what you have at your institution meets this requirement, you can certainly reach out to us and we can take a look at it to help you with that. And then we also require a general statistics course. Another common question is whether AP Stats in high school counts for that. It does technically fulfill our requirements, but you would certainly need to do quite a bit of brushing up if the last time that you thought about statistics was in high school and now you were needing to use it for graduate coursework. Like most genetic counseling programs, we require advocacy experience. We don't require a specific number of hours for advocacy work. And as you think about what you're doing for advocacy work, our goal is that the advocacy work should be something that helps you build confidence in your desire to go into a field where you're going to be helping people who are dealing with difficult situations. Many people who enter the profession of genetic counseling say, I love people and I love genetics, and that's why I want to be a genetic counselor. That was true for me. The advocacy work is a chance to make sure that you still want to interact with people when times are rough. So if the person that I'm talking to starts to cry about something, do I want to stay there with them and help them navigate that? Or would I rather go get Beth to come help them? So the advocacy work, when you're trying to figure out like whether it's suitable for preparation for genetic counseling, I would think about asking yourself that question. Like, is it giving you an opportunity to put yourself in that role of helping people navigate something different, difficult? So that's how I think about that. And then exposure to the field. We certainly would hate to have somebody spend a lot of time and a lot of money in graduate school only to realize that they actually didn't know what genetic counseling was, or that that's not what they want to do. So we look very carefully, or we encourage you to look very carefully at the field to figure out what it's all about and whether it's right for you. That can be by talking with genetic counselors, attending different webinars, shadowing genetic counseling sessions, watching recorded genetic counseling sessions. All of those things can help you really understand what the profession is all about and whether that's the right fit for you. And if it is, why it's the right fit for you. Yes, okay. So here are a couple of other key things about our current admission cycle. Similar to previous years, we don't require the GRE and we won't review any GRE scores that come our way. So we don't want to see those. And then letters of recommendation. We require 3 letters of recommendation. We used to require that one of them be from your advocacy work, but this isn't necessarily required. What we're looking for in the letters of recommendation is that they're coming from people that know you well, and that can speak to different aspects of your preparation. So sometimes it can be helpful to have somebody who can talk about your performance in classwork, maybe somebody who can talk to your ability to communicate people. So maybe that would be somebody from your advocacy work. It's less important what their title or stature is, and more that they know who you are and that they can really talk about your preparation for graduate school and the profession of genetic counseling. And I think we've already mentioned before a couple times that all of our interviews will be virtual. So we take what's called a holistic review of, or we take a holistic approach to review of applications and to interviews. And I'm not sure if this was mentioned at all before I jumped on, but when we think about holistic review, it means that there's not one single part of your application that's going to make or break your path into the program. So that means that we don't have a minimum GPA. Every single application will get a review from start to finish, looking at all the different aspects of your application. So we're looking for people that are passionate and knowledgeable about the profession of genetic counseling. So think about how you can use your essays to demonstrate that. We look at applications to see how people can share a bit about themselves and their life experiences in responding to the essay questions. We're looking for appropriate advocacy experience, and then importantly, also the ability to reflect on that advocacy experience and talk about how it was helpful in preparing or helping raise self-awareness about why this is the right profession for you. We do look at academic preparedness. So we do look at GPAs. We don't have a cutoff, but we look at GPAs and we look at transcripts. We look at the letters of recommendation, as I already said. We consider communication skills both within the written application, so the personal statements and other essays, and then also for those that interview with us for verbal communications as well. And we work to get multiple perspectives from diverse evaluators. So we have a team of faculty members and alumni that review applications, and then people that interview with us usually interview with 4 different people within our program. Residency is not considered, so we don't have any quotas in terms of how many in-state versus out-of-state students we end up with. We really are looking for students that we think can be successful in our program. And we also really encourage people who maybe didn't get in their first or second time around to reapply. Getting into genetic counseling school for, getting into graduate school for genetic counseling, as I showed you, is really quite competitive. When we see people that try more than once, that actually tells us that this is somebody who's really dedicated to this pathway.
All right.
Okay. Can I say one more thing? I wasn't sure if I was going to have a prompt in a slide, but as you think about that holistic review, one piece of advice that we've actually been giving to people and talking about in other venues is that as you are working through advocacy work, maybe shadowing, talking to different genetic counselors, we think it can be really helpful to keep some notes, to maybe journal a little bit about what you're seeing and what you're learning and what you're getting excited about. That can end up being really helpful for you when you then have to write your essays for your application. And it can also be helpful for you when you prepare for interviews. Anything that you have in your resume or your CV is something that one of your interviewers may ask you about, like, oh, I see that you spent a day in neurogenetics. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And if you've taken some notes, that can actually be really helpful in having a conversation about those things that you've experienced. So that's just one little pointer. And now I'll hand it over to the students to talk about their tips and advice to applying to graduate programs.
Yeah. Yes, great. So segue to our students about tips and advice. So we have Janan and Katie who are going to share their perspectives with you. Janan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Janan. I am a second year. I am from Dearborn, Michigan, and I went to undergrad at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. And so something that I think is important to consider when working on applications is the materials specifically, and kind of condensing your why you want to be a genetic counselor into a sentence or two and building your personal statement or application materials off of that. I think having a direct, concise statement of your passion and why you want to be a genetic counselor is super helpful in building off of that, and then also tying in your experiences. So like picking 2 to 3 experiences that you've had in relation to your why, and focusing on what you learned in those experiences and how that relates to your why and your passion of wanting to be a genetic counselor. And I think too, just self-care during the process, it can be a lot to sort out all the different programs you want to apply to if you're considering multiple, and just the different aspects that go into that. So just also making sure you're taking care of yourself throughout the process. And then also just time management. something that helped me was putting all of the programs that I wanted to apply to on a spreadsheet and like my progress throughout the cycle of just marking off what I've done, what I've completed, what application materials I needed to complete still throughout the process. And so just laying that all out was really helpful for me.
Great, Sean. Thank you. All right, Katie.
I second the spreadsheet idea. I think having everything in one document in that way was really helpful for me and also helpful to keep track of the different program requirements, especially for writing that essay, the personal statement. A lot of programs have different word requirements or want you to focus on different things that are coming from your CV. So be really intentional with how you're writing your personal statement for one program versus another. You can't really just copy and paste the same template to a bunch of different schools. That wouldn't serve you well, at least in my opinion. Um, I think also getting a ton of eyes on your paper is really helpful too. Luckily, everybody in genetic counseling is super willing to help with applications. So I reached out to a lot of the genetic counselors that I shadowed in the past year or students that I've spoken to and said, hey, could you look this over and see if there's anything that's missing to you or anything that you think I should elaborate more on, looking for word choice, that kind of thing. So my essay definitely passed through a lot of hands before it got turned in. But for me, it was helpful to turn in the essay early. I just put them all in before winter break, before finals, so that I knew that I wouldn't be stressing about it when juggling school because I was still an undergrad when I was applying. Totally up to you as far as what you want to do, but for me, it was good peace of mind to just get it in and not have to think about it that way. And I guess my last bit, besides self-care, of course, is this is more interview specific, but when you're talking with a program, and even for some of these webinars, make note of what you like, your impressions coming off of the call, because I feel like that's really helpful in ranking the programs. It's just, I felt great talking to these people. They were very personable. The class seems like they all like each other, and those kinds of ideas can really help solidify where you want to rank certain programs.
Great,
Second that
Katie.
too.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, one more thing I forgot to mention too is like it kind of goes into Katie's idea of like not every statement you write isn't one size fits all throughout each program. And so I'd recommend looking on programs' websites and looking at their curriculum and what the structure of the program is and weighing out the differences and what you feel like would be a best fit for you. Like, for example, some programs start clinical rotations earlier on, others start later on throughout the program. And so just balancing those different aspects of each program is really helpful in ranking and matching too.
Great. Thank you, guys. All right, I have just a very few little wrap-up things, and then we'll open it up for more general questions, anything we haven't hit on. If you have questions that you'd like to ask the students without program leadership around, our students are going to be doing something called Michigan Mondays. The dates for Michigan Mondays are there. They're hosting them generally across one in October, one in November, one in December. And I can put the Zoom links for those in the chat. They also were all listed on Instagram, I think. And so that is an option to go there, or any questions that you have about the program or during admissions, please feel free to email U of M Genetics because, oh, actually it doesn't like me putting the Zoom links in the chat. So I will hold off on that and figure that out. But you can look at Instagram for those links, and then you can always email U of M Genetics at umich.edu with any questions. Those will come right to the program. So this is really a time put together by our students for prospective students. It's an open office hours. You can come during that hour, drop in, ask questions about the program, about application cycle, anything you want to get the student perspective on. And then there are some resources. Again, many of these you probably already have. We have the University of Michigan on our website. We have NSGC, the match, as well as ABGC and then ACGCs. Again, many of these you've heard of. They're also on the Google Doc of shared resources I shared at the beginning of the meeting. There was a question in the chat about fee waivers. Rackham does have, that's our graduate school, does have some fee waivers available in certain circumstances. So please feel free to go to that website and see what they have available. And then for those who are residents in Michigan, Magic has a prospective student scholarship to be a fee waiver. That application is due by October 31st. That is for applications to any programs, but it is for Michigan residents. And again, I put that link in the chat as well. And then finally, there's a few other resources to learn more about life in Ann Arbor. And then several things you can find from our website, including more about funding and more about the dual degree program. I can put more of these in the chats, but these are all available from our website. And then finally, thank you very much for joining us. We do love feedback, as the students mentioned, and we want to improve and we tweak and we tinker year to year. So if you can, please take just a moment to complete our evaluation or just provide us feedback on how this open house worked for you, and if you have any ideas for improving it for future prospective students. So thank you. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. Please feel free to put a hand up or unmute, and then we can also pay attention to what's in the chat.
I was starting to type a response to the question about, is there a minimum grade required for prerequisite courses? But maybe I'll just answer it verbally instead. We don't necessarily have a minimum grade required for our prerequisite courses, but that doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to what your grades look like, especially in genetics coursework. So if we had an applicant who had lower grades in their science coursework and didn't do well in genetics, we would be concerned about how successful they could be in some of our genetics coursework here. So if that's a situation that you find yourself in, sometimes there may be other genetics courses, or depending on what the prerequisite is that you're concerned about, there might be additional coursework that you could do in that area, not just to improve your chance of getting admitted to a program, but also to help you be successful in the coursework when you get to that program. And we do have a Lent program. The Lent program is actually, I think it's different than it is in some other institutions. It's actually like a statewide program that includes students and faculty across multiple different universities as part of an umbrella program. So Michigan State, Eastern Michigan, Wayne State, University of Michigan. And we have had some programs some students in that program. They don't get admitted to the LEN program until they're actually already with us by applying to the LEN program. And it's typically been just one student at a time. And to date, they've all been dual degree students. But they don't have to be, but that's who has done it in the past. Let's see, were there other questions that anybody's seeing there?
Looks like we're getting some question up. Looks like the U of M genetics, I'll look into that. The other question is having a car while here. Did one of the students want to talk about that? A car is not required. But does one of the students want to talk about using the bus and other transit around to clinical training and things?
I can speak to this because I actually don't have a car right now, and I've been able to get around just fine. And I'm still going to some away rotations, not as many as the people that do have cars, but again, I'm still going to the ones where they can take two students at a time, and I just carpool with the other students that are there at the same time. And so you can definitely get around in Ann Arbor without a car. I use the bus all the time, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but it's free with your M card, so you don't even have to worry about purchasing a bus ticket or worrying about like how to pay for that.
Great.
Jade is asking, is this open house something you would like to see on our applications or CVs? I think that that's a great thing to list and then be prepared if one of us asks you during an interview, oh, I see you were at our open house. Tell me a little bit about, from that, what made you apply or what you're excited about. It's a good example of like, it's not just about listing things, but then being able to kind of draw something from it. Katie, you could do a dual degree with a different program besides public health. We haven't had somebody do that yet, but there are mechanisms to do a student-initiated dual degree. And I'm happy to talk to you offline about that. I'll just keep answering questions. Victoria, yes, we spend a lot of time in the final semester with our students, preparing them for their, actually we start it this semester before they go to NSGC, but we help students work on cover letters. We help them work on their CVs. We set up mock interviews with some of our alumni. That's what we do internally. And then we also have a lot of resources from our career center through both Rackham and the medical school. So the students, I think, are fairly well supported in that. Let's see. If you are fortunate enough to get an interview, any advice on how to prepare or what makes an applicant stand out? Tried to mention a couple things related to this. We want to hear, we want to get to know you. We want to get to know why you're excited about genetic counseling. And so kind of being prepared to talk about yourself and your journey to genetic counseling is important. Yeah, I don't know, Beth, if you want to add anything to that, or Carrie.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it for a moment. I mean, I think it can be really easy in this competitive environment to get maybe a little too what I'd call checkboxy. Like, yes, I spoke to 20 genetic counselors and I, had 3 hours of this and 2 hours of webinar. And but if you can't demonstrate that you're processing what you're seeing and have takeaways from it and you're really digesting it, that comes through in the interviews. So I really do think Monica's point about journaling, about slowing down and processing what you're doing, I would rather you have 2 of those things than 20 of those things if you're able to really stop and think about the 2 experiences that you had. It really does show. So even though it's tempting to, like, in this competitive environment, just keep adding, really encourage you to slow down, take the time, think about it, write about it. Whatever you do to process, make sure that you're processing these experiences as well. And as far as like standing out, it is really hard and overwhelming. I mean, I think I'll only speak for our program. I don't want to, presume anything for other programs, but we really are looking for a good fit here. Which in my eyes, when I'm speaking to someone, a good fit is someone who seems motivated and capable of taking advantage of a huge university, but being focused enough that they're not going to be overwhelmed by the many opportunities here, and someone who's open to mentorship. We are a heavily mentored program. That's something I didn't talk a lot about, but throughout training, you meet with program leadership in one-on-one meetings, really consistently throughout training. So that first semester, it's like 4 meetings, pretty much once a month. After that, it's kind of built around kind of the timing of clinical rotations, a midpoint and an end. But you're meeting with us a lot, and that's so we get to know you and we can continue to think about like how you're tailoring your education, but also so you can get to know us. And so during the interview process, in reading your letters rec, like I personally am looking for this feeling that like you're someone who is open and ready and wanting that mentorship component. Carrie, I don't know if you have any.
I was actually, I know there's a couple of other questions to get to, but yes, I'm open to that. I was thinking, one of the questions was what about asking one of the current students to speak about their clinical training during the summer outside of the state of Michigan and what that was like.
So we have 2 second years, so they could each maybe give a little input about their summer experience. The first years are just figuring out, so they could give you a tiny bit of insight about the process of figuring it out, but it's probably best for the second years to maybe share what their summer looked like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start with this one. Also, I forgot to introduce myself before. So I'm Madeline. I'm a second year student. I'm from Grand Ledge, Michigan, which is right by Lansing. And I went to Western Michigan for undergrad. But for my summer away rotation, I went to St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee, and I absolutely loved my time there. So I was in pediatric cancer. It was kind of my cancer rotation. And summer is a really unique time because we don't have classes, so we really get to focus on our clinical placement. And so I really got to kind of dive really deep and take advantage of that dedicated time. So I got to like participate in cases 4 days a week. I worked closely with 4 different genetic counselors there, so it was great to see a variety of different counseling styles. And we also worked really closely with 2 of the geneticists there, so I had a really kind of robust experience, I think. And I also took a couple of days to shadow in other related specialties. So I got to shadow a little bit with social work, the child life team there, and also pharmacogenomics, which were really cool experiences. And then just exploring Memphis in a new city was super fun too. So yeah, I really loved my summer experience. And I think if you do have kind of a preference or an idea of where you might want to land, when you do like match to a program, I think it's really great to communicate that early. That really worked out well for me, and Beth and Monica were really supportive and helped make that happen for me because I really wanted to go to St. Jude. So that's a little bit about my experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I went to the Cleveland Clinic for my summer rotation, and I did a peds rotation with a little bit of general adult genetics also. And I had such a great experience, and I learned so much. I think what was unique about that site specifically was I was able to see a mix of both pediatrics and general adult. But also within these 2 categories, there were some subspecialties like immunology genetics, renal genetics, or nephrology, some neurology cases also, which was really interesting to see and allowed me to learn so much from different genetic counselors and also their counseling styles within several different subspecialties. And also too, I really enjoyed my time in Cleveland, just being able to explore a new city. It was a great experience.
And I was going to take another, there was a question about research from Julia. Could you speak on how you support students through their theses? Do you have a thesis committee interview and PIs? So I didn't mention this, but in addition to the class that is taught, similar to what Beth and Monica were mentioning about the mentorship meetings, I do meet with students throughout the first year on a monthly basis as they kind of develop their research ideas. So that's one way, and that's kind of thinking of ideas, kind of guiding the students in different directions as far as what their topic might want to be, depending on what their topic is, guiding them to people who they can talk to more about the research. Yeah, they do have, there is a thesis committee, typically made up of, I would say, 2 to 4 members of the committee is what it usually ends up being. And that's just going to be kind of experts in the field who can provide that mentorship. In addition, there is one member of the executive faculty from the program that is either myself, Beth, Monica, or there's another genetic counselor, Wendy. Each of us is on one of the projects to just guide. Sometimes that is very involved in it. Sometimes just kind of guiding, making sure that everything is staying on task. As far as developing and determining who are the mentors, that again kind of comes from me providing direction. We actually are starting something new. It is tomorrow. It's called a mentor fast pitch, and we're going to have I think there's going to be like 12 different possible research mentors are going to come together and kind of pitch their ideas. It is very very cleverly called a mentor fast pitch. So they're just kind of giving an idea of what possible projects could be. Again, and I've told all the students this, because we do want this to be individualized, the students, that's just to give them ideas. They may be able to kind of start a research topic off of what they hear about at the mentor fast pitch, or they still may want to continue on something that is different. So we provide lots of ongoing support as the topic is developed, and then really working with that committee once your idea is established.
Great. I don't see any new questions coming in the chat, and I am seeing that it's 6:30, past 6:30. I'm going to talk slowly for half a sec, make sure no more questions come up. Dot, dot, dot. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for coming. One thing I didn't mention is from our website, you can also join our email list if you have not joined our email list and you're interested in hearing from the program, hearing about events, getting any, shout outs around admissions. Please join our email listserv. That's a good way to get those things. Thank you so much for joining us and take care. Bye, everybody.